Give me control of a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes its laws. Mayer Amschel Rothschild, founder of the Rothschild banking dynasty in Europe, the wealthiest family in human history.
Back in 1910, the Federal Reserve System was conceived at a highly secret meeting. Who were these men? Senator Nelson Aldrich, business associate of J.P. Morgan, father-in-law to John D. Rockefeller Jr., Abraham Piatt Andrew, who was Assistant Secretary of the Treasury. Frank Vanderlip was the president of the National City Bank of New York, which was the largest and the most powerful of all the banks in the country. Henry Davison, representing the financial interests of William Rockefeller, he was the senior partner of the J.P. Morgan Company. Charles Norton, he was the president of the First National Bank of New York, which was another one of the giants. Benjamin Strong, who was the head of J.P. Morgan's Bankers Trust Company. And incidentally, 3 years later, when the Federal Reserve System was finally created, he became the first head of the system. Paul Warburg, who was probably the most important of all the men there because of his knowledge of banking as it was practiced in Europe. He was a representative of the Rothschild banking dynasty in England and France, one of the wealthiest men in the world. They represented approximately 1/4 of the wealth of the entire world. And what happened on Jekyll Island is that they formed a banking cartel, and they called it the Federal Reserve System. The Federal Reserve System is not an agency of the federal government. All these years, we've had something which most people have thought was a government operation of some kind or another. We're told it was a creation to protect the people, to stabilize the economy, and it's a cartel.
The Federal Reserve is an independent agency, and that means basically that there is no other agency of government which can overrule actions that we take.
So we're not a free market then?
You're quite correct. There is a central bank governing the amount of money in the system. That is not a free market.
And the purpose of the cartel is to enhance the profit structure of the members of the cartel. Period. This cartel went into partnership with the government.
The chairman typically wants to ingratiate himself into the favor of the president and often will accommodate him with loose monetary policy. The Fed, as we've seen, has the ability to extend trillions of dollars to unidentified recipients on undisclosed terms.
The government is able to borrow a tremendous amount of money and therefore spend more than it takes in taxes, but never enough. They always need more than that.
Let's say the United States needs money. Instead of issuing their own United States notes, backed by their own credit, they issue treasury bonds. They then sell these bonds to the Federal Reserve, which buys them with money they created out of thin air. The money that the Fed created then goes to the U.S. The U.S. then pays interest on the money that the Fed lent to the Treasury. So to clarify, the Fed creates money from nothing, loans that money to the U.S., and then charges interest on that money.
There is no money. There's just a checkbook. So this money springs into being precisely at the instant that the Federal Reserve officer signs the check and gives it to the government. If you and I were to do that, we would go to jail. But they can do it because Congress wants them to do it. Operating against the public interest. It encourages war.
It's not backed by gold. It's not backed by anything except people's confidence in the United States of America.
Solution: take back from the Federal Reserve the people's constitutional right to print their own money. Then we would have no need for debt.